I'm president, it will not be dealt with the way it was done in the Senate. It'll be done first and foremost by bringing illegal immigration under control and proving it to the American people. And only after that is done can anything else happen. And it will be something the American people support. We'll see what they're willing to support. It's not going to be an executive order, and we're not going to ram it down their throats.
What Marco said is, I understand it. He's talking about a little give and take and a little negotiation. And you know what? That's okay. That's not the worst thing in the world. There's nothing wrong with that. I happen to be much stronger on illegal immigration. Sheriff Joe Arpaio endorsed me, and if he endorses you, believe me, you are the strongest from Arizona. But give and take is okay, and I thought what he said is okay. We may differ on the degree, but what he said to me is okay.
Okay, an interesting exchange concerning illegal immigration. Marco Rubio, part of the Gang of Eight, trying to get away from that and saying, no, he wouldn't send that back. But Donald Trump very curiously saying, well, Marco's just trying to be flexible. What does that really mean? Let's talk about it by welcoming in one of my favorite journalists in Washington, D.C. back when I was in the Congress. It's an honor to be his colleague. Yes, complete with his Walter Winchell-esque brim. It's John Gizzi, Skyping in from our nation's capital and continuing via Skype from Miami, the one-time advisor to Donald Trump, Roger Stone. Roger, to you first, that exchange right there between Rubio and Trump. Was Trump trying to show some flexibility, some, I don't know, almost this statesman-like notion of dealing with illegal immigration? What did you think of that exchange?
I actually think what he's trying to say is it's an enormous problem. So I'll give you an example. He has pledged to deport 11 million people. But within that, perhaps, and I've heard him say this, we should deport those with criminal records first, then those who have overstayed their current visas next, and then try to deal with the rest. That's the kind of flexibility I think you're talking about. Look, when you're a businessman or a businesswoman, you preserve all your options until you have a better handle on the situation. I think that's what he's saying. I think that he's trying to demonstrate that he has the capacity for some flexibility. And as he said, the American people are tired of nothing getting done because of the intractable divisions in Washington.
And of course, he mentioned a name means a lot to me personally, that of Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio, who endorsed me in my last campaign, and had it been Joe's endorsement alone, I might not be sitting here right now. But that's another topic for another day. John Gizzi, let me turn to you because you watched that debate on Capitol Hill with the Gang of Eight and the Senate actually passing that amnesty bill. When we hear Marco Rubio today talk about immigration, is he involved in some major revisionism of what exactly went on and his role in it?
Well, certainly as a White House correspondent, I heard two presidential press secretaries speak repeatedly of comprehensive immigration legislation that was passed by the Senate and included Senator Rubio as well as Senator Schumer from New York. So in the eyes of the administration, which repeatedly wanted action on the Senate bill by the House, Senator Rubio was a key player. Now, of course, he can argue that he was trying to do the best he could when Democrats controlled the Senate, but this was also when Republicans controlled the Senate that he was on the side of the Gang of Eight. This is something that has dogged him throughout the presidential campaign, and I think if he becomes the nominee, he'll have a lot more explaining to do about it.
Roger Stone, before we say goodbye to you, since you're Skyping in from Miami, your take on what will happen in Florida in 2 weeks. There is Rubio, the junior senator from Florida, Donald Trump, the front runner, who has a lot of connections in the Sunshine State. Can Trump maintain his lead? Will he and prevail in the Florida primary?
Well, I think, first of all, what I read today was that between the anti-Trump efforts being corralled by the Kochs, but funded by Stanley Hubbard and the Ricketts family and Paul Singer and Rubio's campaign, I think you're going to have as much as $70 million spent trashing Donald Trump in Florida. Today, the Trump campaign placed a media buy for approximately $1 million. This is Florida, the ultimate media state. It's an enormous state with a couple very expensive television markets. So I think it is unrealistic to assume that Trump will maintain a 20-point lead. On the other hand, I do still think that the grassroots here is very energized and that he'll win. So what I'll say, JD, is closer than expected, but I think Trump pulls it out.
Fair enough. Roger Stone tonight from Miami. Roger, as always, we appreciate your insights. And John Gizzi, as we talk about what Roger just had to say about this notion of television spending. And again, I go back to my most recent campaign in 2010 when almost $30 million was spent against me in the state of Arizona in a Republican primary. If $70 million is spent on television against Donald Trump, Brother Gizzi, that ain't hay.
No, that ain't hay, or as my father says, that ain't wood either. JD, I do also believe that many Floridians have not been focused on the presidential race, the Sunshine State taking a back seat to the Iowa caucuses, the New Hampshire primary, the South Carolina primary, and Super Tuesday. As we come closer to Super Tuesday, March 15th, I think more and more Floridians will focus on the race, realize that their favorite son, Marco Rubio, is running, and the race will tighten up quite considerably. And also remember something. So much momentum is created in each of the primary states. There's a major primary coming up in Michigan Tuesday, March 8th. How that plays out will impact on Florida, Ohio, and the other states on Super Duper Tuesday, March 15th.